Well, good morning, Indiana, Unit 2. We're glad to be here. I can't talk, but we're glad to be here anyway. It's good to see you all on this, well, it's brightening up here. I don't know what it's like in Indiana. But we are delighted to have a conversation with you this morning about Unit 2, and I will read the question. We'll do some introductions. I will read the question and we'll begin. First, my fellow judges. First, Judge Draper.
Good morning. Congratulations to you. My name is Lindsay Draper. I am retired from the juvenile court bench here in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. I'm currently Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the Institute for Wellbeing in Law.
And good morning, and thank you for your intensive study of the Constitution and for joining us this morning. I am Robert Alice, and I am a professor of history at Suffolk University, which is in Boston.
And if I didn't say it, because I think I didn't, I'm Jack Barlow, and I'm a professor of politics at Juniata College in Pennsylvania. So would you introduce yourselves and your teacher, please?
Alrighty, good morning, judges. We are Unit 2 from Team Indiana from Hamilton Southeastern High School in Fishers, Indiana. My name is Shannon Holinsky, and next year I intend on studying history at the University of Dayton.
Hi, my name is Greg Gross, and I plan on attending the University of Louisville to study computer science.
Hi, my name is Maddie Harris, and I plan on studying international relations at Indiana University.
Hi, my name is Ankit Joju, and I plan on studying computer science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And our wonderful coaches are Miss Kane and Miss Chandler.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you all here this morning and looking forward to this conversation, as I say. So I will read the question and we will get started. I think I'm doing it right this time, right? Okay. So Unit 2, how did the framers create the Constitution? Question for today, big surprise. Question 2, one founder claimed that representatives should, quote, refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country, end quote. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? What alternative systems of representation were considered by the founders? What alternative systems of representation, if any, should be considered in the 21st century? Please begin.
Framer James Madison said,
all the power is originally vested in and consequently derived from the people.
Greg and I agree representatives should refine and enlarge the public views. Madison explains in Federalist 10 the dangers of factions and how Republican government controls their effects. Without representatives, minority rights would be endangered by these factions. Federalist 57 states qualified representatives can protect the common good.
In Federalist 84, Hamilton expresses his mistrust for the general American citizen. He believed the American populace was not educated enough to decide what is best for the country. With a buffer of elected representatives, the people's values are reflected and the federal government can properly function.
Ankit and I respectfully disagree with our colleagues. Anti-Federalist Cato argued in Cato 3 that a republic the size of the United States cannot have representatives united on issues due to the varying interests. Similarly, the Federal Farmer in Anti-Federalist 55 states that a republic cannot accurately represent the people, as a large number of representatives would be needed to accurately represent all interests.
The trustee model intended by the founders only functions when the citizens know their representatives, which is not true today, with only 37% able to name the representative or senator. A delegate model of representation works best for bringing the views of the public to the national level.
The founders considered alternative systems of representation. Edmund Randolph proposed the Virginia Plan, which added 3 branches of national government and a bicameral legislature divided into a House of Representatives and a Senate. However, the number of representatives per state in both houses were based on state population.
Smaller states opposed this because they believed they would be oppressed by the superior amount of representation of the larger states, like New York and Virginia.
William Patterson's New Jersey plan resembled the Articles of Confederation and gave equal number of seats to each state. Large states opposed this plan because they felt a larger population warranted having more representation. With the threat of proportional taxation showed by the failed Amendment 15 for the Articles of Confederation, greater representation was very important to large states.
Alexander Hamilton's plan for representation resembled the British parliamentary system. During the convention, he observed, "The House of Lords is a most noble institution." He proposed a bicameral Congress with an Assembly and a Senate. Both the Assembly and the Senate would have proportional representation.
The population has expanded beyond the founders' expectations, and the number of representatives must be adjusted appropriately. The Reapportionment Act of 1929 capped the number of representatives in the House at 435.
We have added 2 states and 206.4 million people since. The American people are not adequately represented, and we need to increase the number of representatives.
Political scientist Jane Mansbridge suggests a parliamentary system might ease the current gridlock in Washington. The increasing partisanship in America makes it seemingly impossible to get things done. In a parliamentary system, the executive, normally a prime minister, is chosen by the representatives. This ensures the executive and legislature are aligned and can pass legislation without friction. If friction arises, the executive can be removed by a vote of no confidence, as opposed to the impeachment process and removal in the United States.
Senator George Norris believed a unicameral legislature fit the needs of the USA more than a bicameral one. This move would increase efficiency by simplifying passing bills and increase accountability. Eliminating the Senate and expanding the House of Representatives could have the same effect for the national government. As Thomas Jefferson said,
"The will of the people is the only legitimate foundation of any government, and to protect its free expression should be our first object."
this now concludes our written testimony, and we are ready for your questions.
Well, thank you for an interesting statement. So I'm curious, what do you think about the prospects for improving the citizenry, right? Improving the citizen body, like civic education, like this program. Would a more comprehensive program of civic education be helpful for improving representation in Congress?
I would say absolutely. In fact, I think the states like Indiana are actually taking a major step forward for this. For example, the Indiana House of Representatives and Senate just recently passed House Bill number 1358, which actually requires civic education for middle school students. And by promoting civic education at such a young level, I would argue that it makes them interested in topics such as government or political science in the future, and just makes them a more educated citizenry overall.
Furthermore, Purdue University is going to require a civics exam in order for students to pass and get their degree, which also shows that colleges are valuing civics education.
I completely agree with my colleague Ankit here, and I would suggest that some federal legislation, although education is historically a state's right, might be helpful in getting compulsory education to all 50 states, to all our young citizens, and getting them interested and hooked on this early so they know their rights and they know how to participate in democracy.
Well, it is important to acknowledge that historically, education has been a state issue, that this idea of educating all students on civic education is very important and would, I believe, definitely increase citizenship involvement in government, and any involvement in government is going to lead towards greater representation in our Congress.
So I want to just chat with you about briefly about that opinion that was part of your presentation, that the American people were not being adequately represented. And what I would posit to you is that, I think the American people are reflected tremendously by the people, whether in the Senate or in the House of Representatives. And I think that's what, all we would be doing would be putting more people who don't talk to each other in places if we expand or if we eliminate the Senate. Do you agree with me or not? And why? Talk to me about that.
I would agree with you that there needs to be some change put in place before we just increase the number of representatives. Our system as it is now, it doesn't really function. Our government was not designed for fast moving Congress. This is why I propose a parliamentary system, which if we put this into practice, it would increase the number of political parties. And I believe the two-party system is really the cause of a lot of gridlock in the partisanship in Washington. And once we have more political parties that are able to come to fruition and gain seats, we might see some things actually happening and some things getting done.
I would like to add to what my colleague Shannon said. What I would say is that by saying that people aren't adequately represented at the highest levels of government, we also mean that the proportion of people each representative has to represent is wildly out of control. On average, each representative is approximately representing 750,000 people in the United States, which I would argue is physically impossible for any representative to actually adequately represent the interest of their constituents at any normal level. Countries like Britain, for example, have representatives, the ratio of representatives to citizens is approximately 100,000. And I think maybe not to such an extent like that, but increasing the number of representatives would allow for more people's voices to be heard.
In addition to this, this is not what the founders intended. We see in Article 1 that their goal was they wanted no more than 30,000 people represented by one representative. And obviously that was repealed by the Reapportionment Act of 1928. However, that number is much more ideal than the 750,000 that we are seeing today. And while it would be, I think, very difficult to increase that number, we need to consider what is best for the citizens and getting them represented.
Okay, thank you.
Now, of course, the framers of the Constitution were familiar with the parliamentary model, and they quite explicitly did not adopt it. And you used the term gridlock a couple of times. And, my understanding was that that's something they understood and something they actually wanted, that each branch would check the other. So wouldn't the elimination of gridlock actually mean an elimination of checks and balances, which I think they thought was inherent in the system?
I would disagree that gridlock is really checks and balances. A check would be like the veto power. This just innate gridlock in our Congress prevents any bills from getting passed at all. And we can't respond quickly enough. An example would be the COVID-19 crisis and how long it took for our congressmen to agree on stimulus checks, something that Americans really needed. The American people were struggling and our Congress wasn't able to help because they couldn't agree.
I would agree with my colleague Shannon here, and I would argue also that we still see that gridlock in a parliamentary system. We see in Israel, the Israeli parliament has had 4 elections in the past 2 years. And when I say elections, I mean they completely dissolved their government and tried again. And even in the past 5 years in Israel, they haven't had a stable government at all.
Furthermore, the Senate is supposed to be the cooling breath over the hot cup of tea. So you need these checks between the branches of government, specifically between the 2 houses of Congress, else you're going to be left with the passions of the people or the powerful elite of the Senate.
So if we made the Senate a little bit more representative, if we made it based on population, right, like the House, would it become worse? Would it stop being the cooling saucer, as you call it, as George Washington called it?
I believe that it would stop being the cooling saucer because we have the filibuster in the Senate, and with a virtual filibuster that's in place today, legislation would just be blocked by more representatives instead of them working together. So that's why I propose, if we do make proportional representation in the Senate, that we introduce a speaking filibuster.
I would also say the real issue with the Senate is the 17th Amendment, which took the power of the election of senators away from the state legislatures, which really took away the purpose of the Senate. It's there to represent the states. Right now, the Senate is really just another 100 members of the House of Representatives sitting across the street with so much more power. And it's just not functioning as the founders intended it to.
Does representing states give more power to minorities?
It's time.
I really want an answer to that question, though. And by minorities, I mean Wyoming, right? Montana, right? I mean, so think about well, anyway. You guys did it. Did you say something, Shannon?
I was just wondering out loud, are we allowed to answer still? Because I do have, okay.
You're not supposed to, and I'm not supposed to ask, so. I'll give you my email address and you can write me. So, well, I thought you did a nice job in your opening statement. You clearly answered the question, which not everybody has done, right? I mean, the other people kind of go off and make a nice fugue on whatever it is that they want to talk about. But you guys really, I thought, directly answered the question, and you did a nice job with it. You say the delegate model works the best, right? Virginia plan, right? All of that stuff. You knew the 1929 Act that caps the number of representatives. You've read the current literature, Jane Mansbridge and others. And so you come out endorsing a parliamentary system. All very interesting stuff. Your knowledge of civic education, I thought, was very good too, right? I mean, you talked about the recent plan at Purdue. I have a note here to myself to look that up because it's something that a lot of people are talking about. So I thought that you have a very sort of historically grounded and yet lively sense of the present controversies in this whole area. And I commend you for that. I hope you'll keep on talking about it. You're certainly welcome to come to Juniata College and we'll keep talking about it here. So thank you very much. And yeah, great job.
I too was quite impressed with your presentation. Really was glad that you talked about the Reapportionment Act. That made me happy because I'll be real honest with you, I haven't heard anybody talk about it yet. And it struck me as important. You made me start doing some things in my head because one of the things that happens in our country right now is very often when people behave in a certain way, folks try to change institutions as opposed to demanding that there be appropriate behavior by humans. And so if what you have is political discourse having fallen aside, and instead of people working with the compromise that our country was intended to envision, you have people whose behavior says, no, I'm not going to participate, then we come up with solutions to change the institutions. That strikes me as being, well, wait a minute, that's just a different way of doing what we say we don't want done. And so I really wanted to get a chance, and I would have had to find a way to shorten the question, but to ask you if that wasn't really what you were doing. You were trying to change the institution to address behavior, where instead we need to be saying to the people who lead us, do you understand we elected you to lead and not to push your own personality? But I didn't get the chance to do that. Having said all that, you all really were very good and I very much enjoyed it. Thank you.
I agree. You did a very good job. I loved the opening statement, you know, bringing in Cato, the federal farmer, bringing in these various voices, and then, you know, knowing the Reapportionment Act, bringing in George Norris and unicameralism. I mean, looking at different things that have been tried. And then in answering the questions too, you had a real depth to thinking about things, and, you know, bringing in what's happening in Indiana, and then And then thinking through the whole question of parliamentary systems and then getting to Israel. I mean, what I really liked was each of you knows the subject and was able to talk about it in a way that shows you're thinking about it. You're not just committed to one position, but can see the possible problems, which of course you need to do in order to solve problems, is see maybe the solution I'm proposing is going to create a new set of problems, which undoubtedly it will. And I know you've all told us you're all going to great colleges. And Pete, I happen to be a dropout of the University of Wisconsin. And Shannon, I know there's going to be a very fortunate history department at the University of Dayton when you'll be part of it. And I look forward to seeing all of you continuing to think about these very serious problems. And I think you really are part of the solution to many of the problems that Judge Draper and Professor Barlow and I are leaving behind for you. So thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you very much. Good job.
Well, thank you guys for your very kind feedback. And thank you guys for coming out to judge us on the Sunday morning, sorry. And yeah, it was an awesome time. I hope you guys had fun as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I observe the hearing is over. I will stop the recording and send the judges to their breakout room. Thank you all for coming.